welcome to the National Television Network live broadcast of debate on the Appropriation Bill for 2021-22, the afternoon session of the last day of debate. The Prime Minister Hutchinson, this morning presentation was by the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre. This afternoon presentation will start off. The Honorable Member of Parliament for Castres South-East, the Honorable Guy Joseph, will be making his presentation at the afternoon session. We expect to be starting any time from now. The Prime Minister is already seated. The MP for Mikud North is already seated, and a few other parliamentarians awaiting the arrival of the Speaker of the House. Perhaps what we can do quickly is summarize some of the presentation. We can start off with the presentation by the MP for Mikud North. She made her presentation yesterday. That is the Honorable Dr. Gail Rigobert, and she spoke to a number of developments in her constituency. She spoke to the completion of the Mikud Health Center, the new wing of the Mikud Secondary School has been completed. She spoke of a new house for the fishermen of Mikud North, the rehabilitation of the rehabilitation center for Mikud, the new water facility at Loba, construction of farm roads, among a number of other developments in her constituency. The member for Castres Central, the Honorable Sarah Flood-Bogle, spoke at length on her program, the Synergy program, where 20 programs have been instituted, and one of them, she spoke at length, the farm project located at Roseau, on the Roseau farm. There, she said, they were producing a number of crops and vegetables, and she spoke of a number of parcels of agricultural produce. 300 parcels or more have been distributed to needy people, needy persons affected by COVID. She also spoke of a number of participants of the Synergy program who participated in a number of projects. 23 of them participated in a number of projects. She also spoke of a mentoring program, and she named Horizon, where they reach out to young men of the Castres Central community, Castres Central basin. She also spoke of 3 trucks, garbage trucks, that have been made available to the Castres Central constituency, and a number of other projects, the Synergy program that the MP is responsible for. We can also make mention of a number of pronouncements made by the Prime Minister as well regarding the budget presentation, his budget presentation. On the national road infrastructure, the PMs made reference to a total of $120.5 million, which has been allocated to the Department of Infrastructure. Yes, I was saying that in the PM's budget presentation on national road infrastructure, the PM spoke about in the budget this year, a total of $120.5 million has been allocated to the Department of Infrastructure, Ports and Energy to execute the government's road infrastructure program. These roads include the Millennium Highway West Coast Road Rehabilitation Upgrade Project, which should commence shortly. The PM Bridge, with works already on the way. The Road Improvement and Maintenance Program, which is ongoing, and the National Road Rehabilitation Program, NRRP, which has commenced, and the Grosile and Castries North Roads Project, which is nearing completion. The Prime Minister expressed heartfelt gratitude to the government and citizens of the United Kingdom and the government.
I beg to remind honorable members that when the House ruled, the question was that the Appropriation 2021-2022 bill be read a second time. Member for Castries Southeast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I stand to lend my voice to the debate today on the Appropriation Bill 2021-2022, as presented by the Honorable Prime Minister and member for Micoud South. Mr. Speaker, we've had a couple of days of debate in this House. We've heard many things said by members on this side and members opposite. Mr. Speaker, we have not just spoken about what we have done. There have been countless demonstrations of what real representation is by the members on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, I wish that time would permit me to summarize the contribution of the Honorable Member for Castries East and Leader of the Opposition. Because, Mr. Speaker, in his attempt, he really gave more than 90% of his information very subjective to the truth, very questionable. But I will come to that. I want to take this opportunity as I begin my presentation to extend special greetings to the people of Castries Southeast and the people of St. Lucia by extension. Because, Mr. Speaker, it is because of the wonderful people of Castries Southeast that I stand in this honorable House to continue to represent the constituency that represents the crossroads of St. Lucia's development. Because as you would recall, Mr. Speaker, a former member or a former Prime Minister and member for Vieux-Fort South said during his term in office that he would do whatever it takes and spend whatever he has to see to it that I am not in this honorable House. But thanks to the people of Castries Southeast, I am still here and I will be here after the next election to continue to represent them. I extend condolences to the Joachim family on the untimely passing of their son. It is always a difficult thing to lose a family member, and more so as parents. My mother always tells me, I expect my children to bury me, not me to have to bury any of my children. And she has 10 of us. And so I can imagine what it is for a family of 3 with a son and to have lost that person. So I extend condolences to the family. Also, I extend condolences to the Passad and Simon family in Forestier on the sudden passing of Mr. Matthew Passad, better known as Toto. He woke up in the morning, was on his way to work, and he met his untimely death. We are not sure the cause of death. It was not any accident or anything. He just happened to have collapsed and passed. I extend condolences to his family. Mr. Speaker, as we turn our attention to the debate and what it is that the Prime Minister has presented, and I heard the members opposite said that there is no hope in this presentation. It is clear that the members opposite, that they have lost all sense of reason. They are consumed by the fact that election is around the corner and they have not seen the road to victory. That is the challenge that the opposition is faced. And so their judgment and their vision has been blurred. And I can safely say, on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, that 5 of the seats in the opposition is up in contention to be won by the United Workers' Party in this upcoming election. And while you cannot guarantee things in politics, Mr. Speaker, I can almost safely say that three of these seats, Mr. Speaker, is coming, almost certain that it's coming home to the United Workers' Party. And so when you see the reaction of members opposite, it is not because this government has not performed. Every opposition's dream is to become the sitting government. But you see, Mr. Speaker, that will be a dream that will remain elusive for the foreseeable future, unless we have a major change within the ranks of the opposition. They are not going to see the reins of government in a long time. And Mr. Speaker, I will prove what I'm saying to you by the evidence that will be presented in this presentation. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to turn my attention to the focus of my presentation. And I want to begin, Mr. Speaker, my presentation, while the Prime Minister's theme is clearly articulated, adapting, overcoming, and persevering. We are a resilient nation. Mr. Speaker, if you went into no further detail, that is already inspiring hope for something better than where we are today. Yet still members oppose it. Adapting, overcoming, and persevering. And you're saying there's no hope? So, what kind of hope you looking for? The motorboat one? It have to be the hope of the motorboat that you're looking for, and not the real hope, the burning desire within the hearts of people for something better. And everybody in St. Lucia, including members opposite, Mr. Speaker, they know that real hope resides on this side of the political divide. That is why all the things they have not been able to do, they expect us to do it. And we will do it, Mr. Speaker, because this is a government based on performance. And so, Mr. Speaker, I turn your attention to the book of Hebrews. People come and quote, they quote poets, and they quote everybody. I quote the inspired book, the book that was not written by the mere thinking of mortal men, but by the book that was inspired by holy men of God when they wrote. And I heard the members, they are forced to pray in Parliament. They pray in Parliament. But you know why they have not been successful, Mr. Speaker? Because their programs are not blessed. Because they stop prayers in the cabinet. So who inspires them? This government is a praying government. This is a government that seeks inspiration from above. That's why the stars are on the road. Stars are supposed to be in the heaven. Stars, I see white stars all on the road. Signs of surrender. They have already surrendered to the real people who can manage the affairs of this country. Mr. Speaker, in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 1, it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Now that particular faith is not a faith that you put in man. That is a faith that you put in God, because only God is infallible. Only God does not fail. But you know, interestingly, in the chronology of books in the Bible, after the book of Hebrews comes the book of James. And James says, there are a couple passages that I want to pay attention to. James 1 and verse 8. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Double-minded. They cannot make up their mind about anything. So one time they tell you, Esmun kama heshime. No roads. Tomorrow they come in and say, you did not fix roads in their constituency. Double-minded persons. One day, Ojo Labs, we're going to close Ojo Labs. Government should not be supporting Ojo Labs. Because 2 people from Dennery Valley got jobs at Ojo Labs. The member for Dennery North, double-minded now, comes back to the house and says, okay, we will support Ojo Labs now. Double-minded. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Now, James 1:22 says, but be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. And I saw so much deceit or deceiving by the member for Castries East today. I could not believe myself. Here's a classic one, he said. He said that the 0.01% decline in the economy, Mr. Speaker, under this administration is a result of mismanagement and bad governance. Now here's what he did not tell the House. For the 5 years of his government's reign, there was only 1 year there was positive growth. So there was 4 years of mismanagement and bad governance by his government. Mr. Speaker, how else do I deduce? So when Flabo does it, it's bad management. When you do it, what is it? Good management? But I'm going to come to that in greater details. Now, here's my key passage. Yea, a man say that thou hast faith, and the other say, and I have works. So the Bible says, show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. So this government, on this side, we are not asking people to put blind faith in us. We are saying that if your road is not completed, the number of roads we have done so far is an indication that we are not asking you to put blind faith in this government. If you have seen it, then you can believe it. And every member on this side who presented gave you a report card of achievement. I saw the member. Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party is amazing, you know. The things they can do, nobody else can do it. Remember what I told you about St. Jude? They got it at 80%, and when they gave it to us, it was at 50%. Never seen construction in reverse. I heard the member for Castries East. When the late Romanus Lancico left the constituency, it was better than it is now, 25 years later. Now, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if the dictionary has this term, but I think that the member for Castries East has de-represented Castries East. DE-represented. He has de-represented the constituency because the constituency has gone backward rather than forward under his watch. And I challenge him. The UWP did more roads in Castries East than he did in his 5 years as minister responsible for infrastructure. When I was Minister of Infrastructure, I did more roads in his constituency. But they tell you, oh, we victimize him. Now, Mr. Speaker, he struggled to talk about 5 projects. He had 3 hours. He talked about one pipe that was run up to Pavi. Electricity, and he never told the people the truth about electricity. The area that did not have electricity is land that was being squatted on. So the people could, Pavi had electricity way back before he became a parliamentary rep. But you see, he wants to make himself feel good. Now let me tell him what feeling good is about. As we turn to the screen, Mr. Speaker, and we begin to highlight the accomplishments and the achievements of representation. Now, Mr. Speaker, Spider said he had missy projects, the member for Grozily. I have so many projects that I have taken a sample of projects. And on my list there, Mr. Speaker, I need a couple of hours because I have over 50 projects to highlight. But I will. So that's, you can just run through the pictures. That is just in one community, drains. Now, Mr. Speaker, go to cul-de-sac and pause there for me a minute. You see cul-de-sac? We pass in the state of village and we're going straight into town. Cul-de-sac will become a town by the next term of the United Workers' Party in government. You know why? Everywhere have village, they have town, they have city. Well, cul-de-sac will become a town. And when you see this project is finished there, you see what's happening in cul-de-sac? Already you have KFC, you have CPJ, you have the new frontier in Castries for development is definitely in cul-de-sac, the crossroads of St. Lucia's development. Whether you go in north, you go in south, you go in west, once you have to cross the Badlil, you must pass. Or you come in from Soufrière, you must pass through cul-de-sac. And so, Mr. Speaker, when members come and talk about representation, and they oppose projects, you know, you're the new professor. So the people of my constituency are not deserving. Go back to the Badni slide. And we will just run through them, Mr. Speaker. You can just run through all the slides that are there. Because, Mr. Speaker, that court I built, and that's the sample that the member for Babondo has to pay royalties on. Below there is a community center and a preschool that is operated for the benefit of the people of that constituency. Jeremy, you can just run through them. Mr. Speaker, Fromage, the road in Fromage had been neglected by every time Labour Party was in office. Right now we have a brand new asphaltic surface road in Fromage. In Badni, we've done, the Badni road is going to be completely resurfaced from the Lakwa Junction back to Odsa. And I heard the member for Castries is struggling to find... Now, Mr. Speaker, what I'm speaking about there is just in the last 5 years, you know, the cemetery road in Bexon. You know how many years the hearse had to stop by the church and they had to carry the coffin into the cemetery in Bexon. Today, the hearse can drive in style to take the nice coffins and caskets all the way to the graveside where the people are buried in the community of Bexon. We move on. Mr. Speaker, Bel Air roads. Now let me tell them about representation. When I first ran elections, Mr. Speaker, in Bel Air I got only 33 votes The Labour Party got 99 votes. They beat me 3-1. By the next election, we had closed the margins. And that was in 2011. In 2016, we had won that seat, that box, comprehensively. Mr. Speaker, prior to that, I was the one who fixed this road when I was in government between 2006 and 2011. The Labour Party came in. Never block a pothole. I had to do a self-help project to bring a little relief. And you recall, Mr. Speaker, the bus drivers stopped providing service in that area and in the Techime Millet area. Two areas in boundary constituencies. Who was the minister responsible for roads previously? The member for Castries East. And when we went and fixed the roads for the people, you come in and tell me people not eating roads? But what they have to eat, they have to pass on the road to go and buy it. When the bus cannot drop them there, how they going there? You see, Mr. Speaker, double-minded men. They are unstable in all their ways. That's why they're so unstable when they are in government and they cannot govern. The Bel Air playing field, Mr. Speaker, lights have been installed. Not to the standard of Babono, but at least the footballers can play football on evenings on the Bel Air playing field. Mr. Speaker, that again, river wall, because the community was flooding, the water was damaging the playing field. We built a river wall under the DVRP project. Now I'm just highlighting to you the work that I have done. Let's go on. Bexon. Move on. Mr. Speaker, Bexon Community Center. This is not a pipe dream. This is not blind faith. The contractor is on the ground working. The foundation is being laid for that building as we speak. And when it is completed, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to be an indoor facility that can house over 1,000 people, because I expect groups like Chekapesh not to have to go to the cultural center to put up a performance. They will be able to put up a performance in their own community to benefit the people who reside in that area. That's what representation is about. Let's go on. That's the road. Now, that's the site. Go to the site preparation. Let them see. Honorable Member for Labrie, you'll tell them what real representation is about, because you are here. I know they're watching in some corner on TV, but the truth hurts. So they will not come here. My colleague from Labrie, he can deal with that. So he is here. Where are the rest? You see, Mr. Speaker, we move on, because I want people to understand. You see, Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, when they talk about support for the youth, when you talk about you going to come and remove facility fees, you're going to move facility fees to increase prices somewhere else, but I'll come to that. When I came into the constituency and I saw the number of young people after 10 years of Labour Party who had more than 5 CXC subjects with the requirements to go to SAFA, and I would ask them, why are you coming? Did you go to SAFA? And you know what they would tell me, Mr. Speaker? My parents could not afford. Well, if representation is something that makes you proud, then I have to be proud that for the time I have been there, more than 300 young people in Castries Southeast have received bursaries to attend Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. That is what you call investment in the young people. Not to come and pretend you're going to build a youth economy. A youth economy, and they don't have the education that is required to get the jobs that are available on the market. And so, Mr. Speaker, this year alone, we paid for 48 students from the constituency at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. And they are just waiting for us to win the election for me to pay the next semester for them, which begins in September. That's what my representation is about. the Bexar Flea Market. I'm building a market in Bexar. That's not a pipe dream. Look, the containers are in place. The floor has been cast. And Caribbean Metals is designing the roof. And you know when this is completed, Mr. Speaker, what it's going to house? Massage parlor, a food market, a restaurant, a nail pedicure, manicure, a barber, a souvenir shop. Because we're making it a rest stop for the tourists going to and fro. Not just Dennery, I want them to stop. They have to stop in Bexar also. The member for Dennery, he has taken care of his constituency. And I wish the member for Castries East was there. I would tell him, sometimes we talk about Soufrière. If you want to see what real representation is, just go to Dennery South and see the transformation that have taken place in this village by an honorable gentleman who is one of the best representatives, Este for all. Go and see Dennery. Mr. Speaker, now I told you cul-de-sac. You see, we prepared a nice place in cul-de-sac for the site that they are using for the establishment of the project for building the bridge for the Japanese. But this is so nicely prepared. And to take a good idea from the parliamentary rep for Grosile and Prime Minister, the food court that was built in Grosile next to the fire station. Well, when this site is cleared, we are building a food court. We are establishing it as a food court for the cul-de-sac basin. So if you go in and you want to stop and get something to eat, then you have somewhere where the local vendors will have a proper facility to place themselves. And if you go to the Gap today, you will see that Hill Run is there, and you get some of the best curry goat, Mr. Speaker, some of the best meals, barbecue chicken. You can get it there. And then there's another chicken van there now. And now KFC has added variety to what is there, Mr. Speaker. My constituency is developing at a rapid rate, Mr. Speaker. That is what representation is about. And when I came to the parliament after Hurricane Thomas, when no banks would give a loan to do anything in this basin because of the flooding, Mr. Speaker, you saw the last set of heavy rains. You know, Bexar was not flooded, Mr. Speaker. I felt so good when I saw somebody who is not from the Bexar community posted on social media that other constituencies should go and ask the Honorable Guy Joseph to help them control flooding, because with that kind of rain, not to have had flooding in Bexar meant that something has been done right. Now, Mr. Speaker, that doesn't mean we'll never have flooding. We have mitigated against it. Let's move on. There are so many projects, Mr. Speaker. The Odsa Road, concrete roads have been done everywhere in Odsa, you know, Mr. Speaker. The country village, Mr. Speaker, Capitol Hill. Oh, Mr. Speaker, when I inherited Capitol Hill, the roads were so bad in the Andre Affa development. I went in there, Mr. Speaker, and I did a complete overhaul of the road system. Proper concrete roads. And the residents there, Mr. Speaker, they are so happy. They cannot understand that an aspiring leader or government would say, people not eating roads. Go to Capitol Hill and tell the people who could not drive their car and park it in front of their home. Go there and tell them people cannot eat roads. Go to the residents of Bel Air who had to walk to the Gap, the Sarod Gap, to get a bus to go to town. And the children who had to maneuver through puddles of water to pick up a bus because there's no schools in Bel Air. When the buses stop going there, go there to these people and tell them people don't eat roads. That is all you have to say. We are bringing up the standard of living of people in this country, and you make them believe that they have to eat roads. So the money they made from the roads, what do they do with it? I can ask you, do people eat money? People don't eat money. They use the money to go and buy things. But if they don't have no road for them to pass and buy the things, where they going and buy? You see, Mr. Speaker, and you see, it's not only men we give work, you know. You see a lady there pushing her barrow because we understand that these are difficult times. The people who tell you that they are gouvernement malewe, what did they criticize us for, Mr. Speaker? T-Canal projects. You know who the T-Canal is for? The T-Canal is for the Malewes in this country. And it was this UWP government that devised the plan to come up with the T-Canal concept so that there could be shared projects among the average people. So yes, we did not go and give everybody a food voucher, but we gave them jobs. And the jobs that they were able to earn more than if we had given them a food voucher of $300. And every member on this side have engaged hundreds of people with jobs. Let's move on because there's so much to cover. Thereby retaining wall and concrete road, Sarot road construction. Mr. Speaker, prior to me coming into politics, United Workers' Party could not keep a meeting in Sarot. Everybody knows that. Hardcore labor. From the last 2 elections, we have much more flaws in this area because you know what, Mr. Speaker? These people understand the value of quality representation. Roads, water, electricity, street lights, footpaths. Mr. Speaker, I heard the member talk about he taking people out of mud so that they don't walk with 2 pairs of shoes. I want to take him from my constituency. If he wants to understand what real representation is, I can take him for a walk. He don't even have to drive. His shoes would not get dirty. That is what this UWP government has done in every constituency for the people that we represent. We move on. The Sandy Fair Farm Road, you know what they said about it, Mr. Speaker? They posted on social media a road to nowhere. The same people who want to promote agriculture, who want to tell us, you need to do more for agriculture. Mr. Speaker, there are 2 roads from that Sandy Fair Road. One goes to Capisto and one goes to Guabua. Guabua is an area with more than 15 farmers who are actively cultivating their land. One section of the hill was bad. They had cast a strip themselves, Mr. Speaker. We went there and we cast the road under the Community Development Road Project financed by the Minister of Finance and supported by the Minister of Agriculture. And you know what the Labour Party called it? A road to nowhere. So the farmers, so if the road is going to nowhere, then it means the farmers are nobodies. In the eyes of the Labour Party, the farmers are nobody. And then they say, Nuchue Figi. Mr. Speaker, ask them who introduced coupe pa coupe. This morning I was listening to a radio station and a farmer was giving his experience when his farm shed was burnt and his banana plantation was chopped down prior to the 1997 election when the Labour Party pushed the coupe pa coupe in this country. They must not forget their history. And I tell the member for Denry North, he may be new to the politics, but he knows what happened in the banana industry. If you think bananas was so important, you complaining about the fisheries that we put in private sector hands who can buy all the people's fish. Why did you put bananas in private sector if you think private sector is so bad? You see, double-minded persons, Mr. Speaker, they are unstable in all their ways. Now, we move on because, Mr. Speaker, land project, that's Cooley Town. You see where we came from there? Just go back to that picture. You know the lady who lives there, she celebrated 110th birthday a few Wednesdays ago, Mr. Speaker, I went to the house. And for a long time, that lady was able to be brought out of her house because we were able to create a footpath. And she can take a drive on her wheelchair out of her house into the open area. And her granddaughter spoke about it, Mr. Speaker. You see, that is representation that touched the lives of people. For some other persons, that may just be a footpath because they can drive. Then some of them used to drive Range Rovers in Suzukis. I see them driving these days. I don't know what happened to the Range Rover. But Mr. Speaker, I know the value of a footpath for a family who has had to walk in mud all their lives whenever it rains. And you can't give them anything, but they value this very highly. Mr. Speaker, projects. This is what we are talking about. Lucille Lord Drive, up on the Monde, we don't take care of only the poor areas in our community. We take care of the affluent areas also. Lucille Lord Drive on the Monde, Mr. Speaker, that road had been in a deplorable condition for a long time. We have now put in a new concrete road on Lucille Lord Drive on the Monde for the residents. Let's move on. Value, Mr. Speaker. Chef Harry Drive. And Chef Harry Drive was not done just for me. One side of the road is the member for Castries East, and the other side of the road is Castries Southeast. But you know what? I did the road for both of us, Mr. Speaker. So his constituency benefits and my constituency benefits. Representation. You see, Mr. Speaker, that project has started. When I passed down this morning, they were doing the foundation for the Forestier HRDC. You know, Mr. Speaker, Forestier has never had a public building that is owned by government. The school in Forestier is owned by the Methodist Church. The Methodists built that school many, many years ago. That's where I went to school, Mr. Speaker. A few church buildings. We don't have a hurricane shelter. We don't have nothing in the community except a school that belongs to the church. For the first time in the history of this community, government will own a piece of asset in the form of a building that will be used for the benefit of the community of Forestier, Mr. Speaker. And I'm proud that this is the community that I am from, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Forestier Road, that's a dead end, but we've done it, Mr. Speaker. We endured bad roads for more than 3 years, and I thank Minister King, because when I said to him, I said, Minister, don't come and pothole the road for me. If you pothole it, it will not get fixed. And through the resources, the limited resources of the ministry, Mr. Speaker, outside of even the Taiwanese funded project or any of the other projects, he made the funds available through the Ministry of Infrastructure. I thank him and the Minister of Finance that we got that road, a proper road going to the community of Forestier, which benefits both Tiroche, Geno, and Forestier, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, tell the Labour Party, go to Forestier and tell Forestier people, Munpaama Heshime. They know how much money it has saved them. The bus drivers used to turn in the Geno Junction, and persons traveling to Forestier sometimes had to wait hours on the bus stand to get a bus until they have 5 or 6 people because the road was so bad. Today, Mr. Speaker, everybody rushing to go up Forestier. Representation. We move on. We've done drainage projects. Mr. Speaker, they talk about housing. You know, they talk about the distress fund. And you see, the distress fund was only for people whose houses got burnt. But under this UWP administration, it's not just houses that get destroyed we build. When we look at people's living conditions and we can help to improve, then we build houses, as you saw from the member from Central Castries. You have seen from other reps. Mr. Speaker, These are just a couple of the houses. We built more than, in my tenure as parliamentary rep from 2006 to now, we have built more than 50 houses for people in the constituency of Castries Southeast. And you know what I love about my people? You see these houses you see there? We did not pay a cent for labor to get it built. The people came themselves and put in the labor, and we put in some of the material. Some of it we received through SSDF, and I want to thank my colleague minister, member for Grozile, because Mr. Speaker, we are a team. We are working together for the betterment of the people of St. Lucia. We don't build houses for ourselves. We have our houses already. We have to improve the living conditions of the people, and we don't give them substandard things. We move on, Mr. Speaker, because I want them to understand. Labey, the daycare center, the Ministry of Education had challenges finding the money. We use our CDP through the support of the minister who had to give us permission to go ahead and do some of the work. We have now completely refurbished. Now you may not see that picture there. I don't know if we have it. But we completely refurbished the daycare center in Labey from putting on a brand new roof, raising the roof because the heat was too much, to enclose it properly. And you know, Mr. Speaker, somebody, one little section of the building needed some tiles, and he contributed a few tiles. And then he had that all on Facebook. We don't go and boast about that. We don't boast about these things. We don't do these things for political reasons. We do these things because these are the things that the people need. And when you do the right things for the people, they will do the right thing towards you. They will vote for you. You don't have to tell them that. We move on, Mr. Speaker. Road construction in Mac, Mr. Speaker. The amount of drainage. And if you go behind the post office in Crownlands, coming from Sun Valley Park, Mr. Speaker, you know what happened there, Mr. Speaker? We put a big drain, concrete drain from there all the way to the river under the World Bank funded DVRP project. And you know, Mr. Speaker, that's why that area did not flood with the last heavy rains we had there. The water was able to flow freely all the way to the river. And Mr. Speaker, the people because I went there before I went to cabinet the Monday morning, and the people told me, we knew you would come, but there was no need to come this time because there was no flooding in the area. What have I, Mr. Speaker? Good works. You see, Mr. Speaker, this is what we are talking about, improving the lives. And you know, every one of these projects, Mr. Speaker, every single one of them, they attack Fresh Start and Nationwide and this one and that one. All of these projects I am pointing out in my constituency went to the small contractors in Castries Southeast. Not one was done by a major contractor. That is what I consider. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, when some of them used to put $50 in T-shirts and give it to people for them to vote for them, I used to tell the people, I don't have money to give you, but if you vote for me, I will give you representation. And that is what I am giving to the people of Castries Southeast. And I know that's what all my colleagues are doing. You see all these boulder packings? Different locations in Mac, in Odson, in Bexon. Mr. Speaker, that's the Mon Liberty Park. And I heard the member for Viewfort South said he gave me $3-point-something million. Mr. Speaker, there's nothing further from the truth than what? Mr. Speaker, I've been in this house a dozen times, and I said, I begged, I pleaded. The late Asen James and myself stood in the corridor in the Ministry of Economic Development waiting. I stood right on the corner there, and I spoke to the member. He was the Minister of Finance. I said, Mr. PM, that's the member for Viewfort South. We started a park in Bexon. We need $35,000 to finish the park. Mr. Speaker, he told me go. And I showed you the email that he sent. So while he's telling me go, He has already given instructions to the department that nothing can be approved without his prior approval. So he can go up and down. When the late Asen James and myself, when we were tired of walking up and down, Mr. James told me, I am too old for this thing. I'm done with that. We stopped going, Mr. Speaker. 5 years it had to take the UWP coming back into government to get the $45,000 to finish the Sun Valley Park in Bexon. And today you come in and lie to this honorable house to tell them that you gave $3.5 or $3.2 million for projects, or you gave to me. I know where they give the money, Mr. Speaker. And the money was not spent in Castries Southeast to do projects. It was money for campaign to try and get me to lose the seat. But Mr. Speaker, I won by the biggest margin ever in Castries Southeast. You see, don't play with the people. If you think you can fool the people. That's Monrouge. That's another Labour Party stronghold. But Mr. Speaker, when I represent everybody. Labour of Flabo. I can show you where they fix roads and they skip the house that belongs to Flabo, as if the Labour Party person who has to drive there does not have to pass the piece of road that is in front of a Flabo house. And these double-minded persons talk about they talk about victimization. Music studio in Wavin Poisson, that has started. It's not Dennery segment alone that's going to get a music studio. My gospel singers in Castries Southeast will have a state-of-the-art recording studio. It's not Grosile alone that will have a recording studio. We have broken ground and work has started on this recording studio in Wavin Poisson. And here's the plan, Mr. Speaker. The recording studio is adjoining the multi-purpose court that is well lighted in this area. So we are building an outside platform to the recording studio as a stage. So if you want to put up a performance, then you can use the multi-purpose court as the gathering area for the public. You have all the musical instruments in the recording studio, and you have a performing stage for the artists, and they can walk down from the stage and go right into the crowd onto the multi-purpose court. Innovation, creative thinking, that is what we have on this side of the house. That's what they don't have on the other side. We move on, Mr. Speaker. Odsa Community Center. And work is look, that's where it is. We know. That is faith with works. Show me your faith by your works. That's what this government is about. Faith and works. We're not asking you. You heard them? They're promising things. 100 million immediately. And immediately took 5 years and it didn't reach. That's like, you know, Mr. Speaker, there's a saying. They asked the gentleman approximately what time that happened. He said approximately pate la pièce. Immediately pate la pièce, Mr. Speaker. Immediately never reach. You see, Mr. Speaker, Odsa playing field. And they tell you we're not doing things for the young people. We're not maintaining playing fields. Look at it. And you see right in the corner there, Mr. Speaker, of the light, you can see a 3-story building. I want the member for Babono to know he was not the only one who faced victimization. When we won elections in 2006, the Odsa school infested with termites, overpopulated with children, and there was money approved. A former minister of education under the Labour Party government prior to the 2006 election said they're not building the school in Odsa. And when we won the elections in 2006 and we came in, they tell me the money was there but it's not available. I said, find it. And we put that 3-story building there in Odsa to house the children of the community. You think it's to dare the Labour Party? And I heard them boasting about universal secondary education and this and that. When you selected which areas you are going to build schools. So the same way you said, Lage don't need a school. They said Odsa did not need. And Mr. Speaker, you should have seen what was separating the class. One blackboard. One teacher on that side of the blackboard speaking, and the other teacher on the other side of the blackboard. And children were fooling all the way up to the blackboard, so the children between each class was seeing each other and being disturbed from different grades. And the money was there, you know, Mr. Speaker. And they said they're not building the school. Mr. Speaker, that's in Odsa. You know, people in Odsa don't even worry when it rains again. Odsa always used to flood when it rains. When they saw what was there. Now, Mr. Speaker, Kachime, look at that. That balcony was there. There was a wooden balcony there from since Hurricane Thomas. When the member for Castries North was Prime Minister, we negotiated money. There were funds through the DVRP to help do some of these projects. Labour Party spent 5 years, Mr. Speaker, with the member for Castries East as the Minister for Infrastructure, and that is his boundary constituency. And you know, Mr. Speaker, that remained until we came back into government. We had to build a wall to widen the road, because it was and a whole section under the road was hollow. People driving over that and not knowing the danger. Mr. Speaker, if you had fall from there, you know where you're reaching. Right Fera from Kachime. And then we put a bus shelter. That is, you see, Mr. Speaker, that's why I want the member for Cast. I wish, and I know he there watching. That is what representation is about. And I can show him that in 5 years, I have done more in my constituency than he has done for 25 years as the parliamentary rep. And you want to come and talk about St. Lucia? You know what the Bible says? If you are faithful over little things, I will make you ruler over many things. You cannot be faithful in representing one little constituency. God will give you the whole of St. Lucia to manage. Mr. Speaker, that's sorrow. Let's move on. You know, the Sun Valley Park. That's the park they did not give me the $35,000 to finish. You know why it's underutilized? More because of COVID. But I want them to understand that the people of Castries Southeast knows representation. Let's go on. Let's go on. That's Boulder Parking in Mac again. Tiroche, retaining wall. You know, on his side of the constituency again, that wall had collapsed, part of it collapsed. Since the Christmas Eve trough, Mr. Speaker. On his side, because that side of the road is his, it had to take a UWP government coming into office, facilitated again through the Minister of Finance and Minister of Infrastructure. We were able to build a proper retaining wall and widen that road. That's close to the cemetery in Tiroche. And we built a concrete road to the cemetery. Everybody had to walk down that hill. You know, Papito Road construction. Let's move on, Mr. Speaker. Now, let me tell you something. When they talk about representation, Mr. Speaker, and talk about loving people and caring people, you see this bus never made a trip for money, Mr. Speaker. Every funeral in the constituency, when children have to be transported from one area to another, sports meets, different activities, when church groups have to go and perform in other places prior to COVID, as parliamentary rep, I have made a bus available to the constituency where they don't even have to come through me as the parliamentary rep. They can just call the office and they know that a bus. And you know, it's not just in the constituency. Sometimes somebody have a family who died in Choiseul, we send a bus to take people from the constituency to Choiseul. You talk about loving people. You talk about caring about people. If you want to know about that, come to Castries Southeast. Let's go on. Mr. Speaker, school supplies. And these school supplies was not purchased with government money. These school supplies was purchased with my resources and people in the constituency who contributed to the well-being of students. You want to talk about exercise books and bags and these things after 25 years? Mr. Speaker, from my first year in government, I have been doing that until today. Mr. Speaker, it speaks for itself, you know. And let me tell you, most of these things we don't even select the people. We send it to the principals and the teachers of the school, so they cannot say we discriminated against the people who received it. Let's go on. I see the speaker moving. Let's go on quickly. Let's go on. That's good lands. That's roads in Mac, concrete roads. The silting in cul-de-sac. Tablet distribution in primary schools. You know, Mr. Speaker, the double-mindedness of the people opposite, especially the member for Castries East, who said, oh, we're talking about 8,000 devices. That is 8,000 devices in the secondary schools. We have not spoken about the thousands of tablets and other devices that each individual member have personally contributed in their constituencies. Mr. Speaker, I didn't have to come here, but you know, I want to show the members opposite what real representation is all about. Let's move on. Land for housing. They talk about people owning land in this country. That's the Bel Air housing development. It's being done. We acquired, this government, 44 acres of land, which has been subdivided. The roads are being put in, and housing lots will be made available to young people, first-time homeowners, people who do not have a basis to go to the bank and get a loan. You know how we plan to do it? We are going to give them a payment plan that they can pay over a period of time and accumulate no interest. And I know that's what the member for Babono wants, and we are working on his Talvan project. And I know in Denrin, Wajoli, and these areas, I know in Canris we are working on that. We have projects working on in Choiseul, Labon, Mr. Speaker, Olio, in the member for Labry's constituency, in Lacwa and these areas, we are working on the housing developments and the proud properties to make the lands available to the people in Opiko, not just in UWP constituencies like the Labour Party usually do. We are doing in all constituencies, Mr. Speaker. In Deglo, Mr. Speaker, in Deglo, we have identified crown lands, and we have over 50 lots in that area, Mr. Speaker, that will be utilized for members of the community. And Mr. Speaker, you know who we are targeting? We are targeting people whose family does not have how many acres of land. So we have put some basic requirements in place. So we're going to evaluate. So when you send us your name and you tell us you don't have no land, we can check with the land registry. And if your family does not have land, or even if your family has land but you don't have yourself, we are going to give you priority. Because, Mr. Speaker, we believe in empowering the people. When they have title to a piece of land, they can go to the bank and they can do a transaction and they can get money. And that's the housing development in Forest here. That's the only one they did not have time spoil, Mr. Speaker. And we were able to move quickly. We sold the land. Look at the houses that are being built there now. You see, Mr. Speaker, quality infrastructure. That is the first housing development established in St. Lucia that the Ministry of Infrastructure, upon inspection, was able to take over the roads for maintenance and everything because it was done up to standard. Shock housing development. Mr. Speaker, over 200 lots will become available and the project is at an advanced stage. Let's move on. You know, Mr. Speaker, the Talvan housing project. And when they talk about friends, family, and foreigners, I want to remind them, Mr. Speaker, JLDP was a French company. They gave them title to the entire parcel of land, and on that parcel of land have over 80 people in the Talvan area who own their houses. You giving a foreigner title to land where the local St. Lucians have their hard-earned sweat in their houses in that development, Mr. Speaker? Can you believe that a Labour Party, in all good conscience, would come to the cabinet, sit down as cabinet ministers, and agree that that land should be transferred to a foreign entity? And you talk about friends, family, and foreigners?
Honourable Member, you have 10 minutes in which to complete your presentation.
Mr. Speaker, as we move on, now let's talk about, because I've highlighted what I've done in my constituency. Let me highlight what I've done in my ministry under DVRP. We'll just run in. Mikud Secondary School. That's the new block. Mikud Secondary School. Thanks to the Minister of Education. Mikud Wellness Center. Let's go on. That's the Dennery Polyclinic. It's out for tender now because the drawings we inherited from the previous government, when we did the groundbreaking and we started the project, we realized that the project was worse. It was worse than the design of St. Jude Hospital. You know what I was told by the consultant? If you go ahead with this project, you'll have a séjourly on your place, on your hand. Séjourly. Just like you had the fiasco at St. Jude, is Boisjoli, so he tell me you'll have a séjourly on your name. My advice to you is go back to the drawing board. You know the person they had contracted to build the project, Mr. Speaker. When we went ahead and engaged the person who had designed the project, when we asked him to explain his design to us, he was charging us more than it would cost us to do a whole new design to explain the design to us. His cost was over $300,000 to explain what he had designed for us. You know what we had to do? Go back to the drawing board, redesign, and as a result, Mr. Speaker, we had to go back out to tender, and I assure the member for Dennery, North and South, that Dennery will have a state-of-the-art polyclinic in short time. We move on. Victoria Hospital, Respiratory Hospital, totally outfitted as a respiratory hospital under the DVRP project. Again, we move on. Blasha Community Center, under construction as we speak, Mr. Speaker. Choiseul Secondary School, New Wing. Thanks to the member for Choiseul, who applied a lot of pressure, we got that project going in record time. The same project that the Labour Party sat on for 5 years and could not get started. Within the first year of the member for Choiseul, we were able to get the Choiseul Secondary School on, getting it constructed and completed. Constituency, CDP programs. Mr. Speaker, the Soufre Old Trafford Complex, finance under CDP. The Castries Central Car Wash, the member for Castries Central, not about giving the people handouts. She is creating an environment where the proud young men of Castries can go and ply a trade and earn a living for themselves. The Castries market, and Mr. Speaker, the Castries market benefits every single one of us around the table who are farmers in our community. And even if we don't have farmers in our community, we still benefit because the people we represent go to the market to shop. And now, Mr. Speaker, the farmers, the vendors no longer have to be exposed to the elements, rain or sun. Mr. Speaker, they have comfortable quarters in which to operate, and I thank the government for allowing this project to be established. Roseau Farmhouse, CDP, let's go on. toilet facilities shed at Gara Cemetery, the member for Babono, real representation, the rehabilitation of the community center in Derando, the member for Anslare Canries, Tiroche Recreational Park in the PM's constituency. Mr. Speaker, we can go on and on. Mikud New Extension Park, Blasha footpaths, Kazamba Concrete Road, not the main road that was done under the Taiwanese project, the other road. Mr. Speaker, Jackmel Playing Field. I want to show you when they talk about how we using the resources, you want to know how we use the resources? That is how CDP projects are being implemented to benefit every constituency throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia. Economic Development and Transport Department, driver's license. Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, 17 services are available online at the Transport Department where St. Lucians in the comfort of their home can do their transactions online. So members in here, you can renew your license. You can get it posted to you in the mail. You don't even have to go down there. That's the new level that we are taking governance to in this country. Go on, Mr. St. Lucia Medium-Term Development Plan. And I pause a while. Mr. Speaker, I have a St. Lucia National Development Plan. That's back in the 70s. Every single time that UWP is in government, there is a clear development plan. After 15 years of Labour Party governance is when they decided to put a vision commission in place to try and figure out what to do after 15 years. Mr. Speaker, how, there's always a plan. We have a plan, Mr. Speaker, under my ministry. The designs for the new police headquarters is being done as we speak, Mr. Speaker. The soil testing is being done, and very soon we are going to break ground because the contract has been entered into with the NIC. I know that the Ministry of Finance is finalizing the negotiations on the interest rate and what is required. And on the BOLD project, our police officers who are deserving of the best facilities will have a state-of-the-art police headquarters in Castries. Mr. Speaker, there's so much. The St. Jude project. And I wish I had more time to go into greater detail. But I await the members opposite. Mr. Speaker, I need to move on quickly. But I want to assure members that once we decide on the meeting with the members opposite, all of the facts that they require will be presented. Because, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to taking them to a walkthrough inside the new St. Jude that we are building. And I know at the end of that, Mr. Speaker, every one of them on the opposition side will vote for this government when they have seen the facility that is coming for St. Jude. Mr. Speaker, I move on quickly. The member for Castries East, because I cannot touch on all of the projects. They try to highlight what they have done. Mr. Speaker, nothing. They have nothing to show. And Mr. Speaker, he spoke about the performance of the economy. I want to tell the member, Mr. Speaker, they gave us false information on public debt. I want to set the record straight with them. Because, Mr. Speaker, GDP is what they touched on. And I want to tell him, in 2011, when the Labour Party came into government, GDP stood at $5.096 billion. When they left office, if I go up to 2015, because they did not implement the budget in 2016. You know what GDP was? $5.060 billion. $36 million less than what they inherited in 2011. Now, Mr. Speaker, if that is not running the country in reverse, you tell me what is. Labour Party run the country upside down and do there. What should be going forward was going backward. Mr. Speaker, the information is there. How you found GDP at 5.96 billion, and after 5 years, and had their growth rate, minus 0.01, minus 0.2, positive 0.3, and 0.01. Now, here's what he said. We mismanaged. That is why there was a decline of 0.01%. Let me tell him what the truth is. The truth that he cannot deal with. In the first year of UWP in government, the GDP that they had brought down to $5.06 billion went to $5.234 billion. In 2017, it went to $5.417 billion. And in 2018, it went to $5.575 billion. And by 2019, it went down by just 3 million. It went down to $5.572 billion. So you know what that means, Mr. Speaker? It still remains true today that our worst year in government was better than the best year of Labour Party. And that is excluding 2020. Now, Mr. Speaker, they spoke about debt, and they spoke about our jump in the GDP, debt to GDP. I want to bring to his attention, Mr. Speaker, let's take Trinidad and Tobago. Page 7. It says that the net public sector debt in fiscal year 2020 compared to 2.6% in the previous year. Consequently, the net public debt to GDP increased from 65% to 80%. In Trinidad, Mr. Speaker, with all of its resources, can you imagine that the debt to GDP in Trinidad with oil, with all the manufacturing, move by that margin? Now, what caused the jump in the debt in St. Lucia? And that is why I am afraid of what will happen to St. Lucia if you see the members opposite ever get to govern. Because I wanted to give them a basic lesson in economics, but time does not permit me. Mr. Speaker, the jump in the debt, your debt is calculated over the amount of your GDP. So obviously with a contraction of 20% of your GDP, because your GDP moved from 5 billion to 4 billion, but you still have the same debt. So when you calculate the debt against the 4 billion, as compared to the 5 billion, naturally it will go down, Mr. Speaker. As soon as we are able to deal sufficiently well with the COVID pandemic and things begin to return to normalcy in the economy, you know what is going to happen? Mr. Speaker, if the GDP had not contracted, you know what our debt ratio would have been? 66% or thereabout. So at the end of the day, the member for Castries East is disingenuous in his method of calculation. He does not understand, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, you should wrap up now.
Okay, I'm wrapping up, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, remember I started by saying, is faith and works. Some want you to put faith in them that they will do it. After 25 years, they have not done it. After 15 years at the helm of governance, they have not done it. But they want you to put blind faith in them. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia is not ready to be led by people who want you to have blind faith. On this side of the house, We have shown, we have proven that we are better managers. We grew the economy when they could not grow it. We executed projects when they could not execute it, Mr. Speaker. And now the member wants to tell you he can do it. What can he do, Mr. Speaker? It is obvious that his own members do not believe him. And he is not here. So I will make a little donation to his colleague here. Twice I have had to make that presentation to him. How to lead when you're not in charge. Because obviously he is not in charge. He needs a few ideas on how to lead. So I am available downstairs. He can come to me. I will make that book available to him to give him a few tips on how to lead. Because clearly he's trying to lead and he's not in charge. Mr. Speaker, I appeal to the people of St. Lucia. The record is clear. The presentations made by every member on this side. Mr. Speaker, some people in Viewfort want to be remembered 50 years from now by Tululu and Zagaya. But this government wants to be remembered by the way that we have changed the lives of the people of St. Lucia for the better. And so I say, there's only one government that knows how to keep working. That is the United Workers' Party, and we are going to stay with this government and keep working. I thank you, and may God bless you.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it has taken me 5 years to get to this point, Mr. Speaker, where I believe that my constituency deserves to be put first above everything else. And I'm going to start my rebuttal not to be left out by my other colleagues who have amply displayed what they have been doing in their constituencies over the last 5 years, Mr. Speaker. And I heard a member on the other side try to suggest that these were plans and drawings. But what I saw over the last 3 days, Mr. Speaker, I think that you would join me in saying that these are actual works. These are projects that started, some of them, as early as within 6 months of the administration taking office. And some of them are now coming to fruition as we speak. But this was a well-orchestrated plan, Mr. Speaker. about building a new St. Lucia, and a new St. Lucia that would be built from the constituencies up. It wasn't about trickle down, about building big projects, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud of the fact that despite our best efforts with some of the larger projects, the success that we've seen today has been on the hard work of my cabinet colleagues, as well as the MPs, and also hundreds, if not thousands, of civil servants who bought into this new plan of building a new St. Lucia. And in this last 5 years, I think that we've started to set the trend now, Mr. Speaker, of ministries competing against each other and people fighting to display their capacity to execute work programs. So if I can start, Mr. Speaker, in my own constituency in Micoud South. You know, earlier today, Mr. Speaker, I try not to respond to a lot of things that I hear on the media, but sometimes when you hear something as egregious as I heard this morning, I was compelled to call the show this morning. That there was a particular host this morning, Mr. Speaker, who tried to indicate and make a comparison between Sir John and Castries East, and suggest that Sir John had not done anything for his constituency. Mr. Speaker, that is so blatantly disrespectful to a man that we know as the father of our nation. But I can assure you that the work that he has done in Micoud South and Micoud North, and in particular the two Dennery projects, which were really the heart of Sir John, going back to the 50s, of simply getting people their land. The reason why bananas was called green gold, Mr. Speaker, is because of the genius that Sir John brought to it. And when you drive through the length and the breadth of my constituency, you can see the remnants of his work in the multitude of concrete houses. You see the road network that I continue to be amazed at through the length and the breadth of this country, Mr. Speaker. I mean, I'm just shocked, Mr. Speaker, to think of what this man went through, that when he inherited St. Lucia, that we only had 2 secondary schools. Think of what the road network was. And certainly the life in the two Micouds, and in the South in particular, how difficult it was. It was a gross misstatement, Mr. Speaker, and I felt that I had to correct it. And even today, the work that I'm going to share with you, Mr. Speaker, in a large part, is work that we've built on that foundation that was started by Sir John. And certainly when I took over the helm of the United Workers' Party, it was building on that foundation of success that was already established. So in many instances, it was to repair roads that have gone neglected for the last 20 years. Other than the Deriso Road that Minister King, when he was the Prime Minister, and Guy Joseph, when he was the Minister of Infrastructure, along with Arson James, were able to bring that. But the drains to deal with now the new climate change, the strengthening of the schools and other public buildings that he had built, the sporting facilities, the feeder roads throughout the constituency, had all been allowed to go to neglect. So every single year, Mr. Speaker, in fact, more than just during Christmas period, we provide hampers to over 300 needy people. And we make sure it is the neediest of the need that are getting these hampers, to make sure that the gift is not just once a year, but multiple times during the year, Mr. Speaker. One of the things is being Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very grateful to the people of Micoud South, who became accustomed to having a Prime Minister in their constituency. Sadly, I don't have an estate like the former Prime Minister, Sir John. I don't have a home in the constituency like Mr. James. I don't think there's anybody that I could have met that represented and stayed within the constituency to the extent he was. I see my good friend Mr. Stanislaus again has been following in the footsteps. There is not a night that we have a late cabinet meeting that he doesn't go back to his home in Soufrière. Mr. James was renowned for that. But I want to say that in my own way, because each one of us is our own people, we find ways to be able to connect with my community. And I'm so grateful for the time that I do get to spend there and the warmth in which I'm greeted. And certainly, I believe they know that there isn't a day that they're not in my thoughts and my prayers. Mr. Speaker, this was a very vexing issue for the people in Micoud, where we had an inadequate water supply to the extent that people were sharing water on alternative days. And there was something that Mr. James really wanted to get done. And I'm very grateful to the support of my good colleague, Mr. Guy Joseph, who was very close to Mr. James and said we must make sure that this project is completed. Mr. James had used some of his funds from the CDP funds, and I want to also thank WASCO for coming in and assisting us in getting this project completed. This was completed very early, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very happy to say that the complaint now I get from many of my constituents is the water pressure is too hard, and so therefore they're all looking for support to get their pipes redone and strengthened. But again, these people are not complaining anymore of not having water on alternative days. Mr. Speaker, this is a project I'm hoping that's going to become the trademark of many of the other constituencies. It's a park that has tennis court, which we're about to put a new flooring on. We've put in a water interaction, which basically is a concrete pad, Mr. Speaker, with water sprouting out so that the kids can go and bathe in it. We've put in benches, we're putting in new trees, we've got Wi-Fi, we've put in the slides, and we've put in a play area. We've also put in a canteen, so again, if persons want to rent the facility for a birthday party or a special occasion, they can do so. It is entirely fenced. So again, as a parent, if you go there and you want to sit and talk to your neighbor and your kids are running around, you don't have to worry as to whether the kids are going to be hit by a car or anything else. It's been completely made child-friendly. This piece of land was being occupied by a very good constituent, Mr. Kent, in our constituency, and he was very gracious, and we were able to move his trucks to a different location and return this as a public facility. Just nearby, we've also just redone the entire road in that area. A lot of the persons who live in that Beauchamp area are persons who've returned from England. I don't think that they've ever expected that the road would have been done, although they were very deserving of the road getting done. So this has been a complete enhancement of that area, and it's something we're looking to roll out in all of the other different constituencies, Mr. Speaker. The Beauchamp housing development, which we did with Invest St. Lucia, over 77 lots were put in. All the lots were bought by, I think by large part, by persons from the constituency. They all have water, electricity, and all the roads have been put in. And in fact, I think three of the houses have already started construction, but all the lots were sold within 2 weeks. And so I'm very grateful to Invest St. Lucia and the Minister, Bradley Felix, for his assistance, and the chairman of Invest and the board of Invest and the staff of Invest for taking on this particular project and providing new lots for many of the Micoudians who now want to come back and live in the area. They're seeing the prosperity taking place in the south, and so while there was a huge migration from the south for many years, we're now seeing a lot of people wanting to come back, so we're very excited by this project. Every summer, my mother and my family host summer camps. It started off with 25 kids. I think the last time we did it in 2019, we had almost 90 kids. We were teaching chess and checkers, and my children have also participated in this program and arts program. So again, I want to thank my mother. And I know that many of the kids have really enjoyed their 3-week summer camp and look forward to every year. I'm hoping that we can bring this back very soon after COVID. Like my other constituents, every year we give out electronic devices to the top students who have graduated entering into secondary school. It was an idea that was given to me by my Minister of Education and my neighbor nearby. Thank you very much, Gail, for that. And I know that many of the kids are very, very grateful when we're giving them computers and also giving them printers to accompany them. The rehabilitation of the Deriso Combined School. Again, I want to thank the Ministry of Education for their support on this school. The back part, the roof was completely redone, rooms were redone, and the school was repainted, and many of the bathrooms were upgraded. So again, this has been an enhanced situation, so I'm very, very grateful for their support. I know in meeting with the principal, she's obviously elated with the back annex, with the new roof that's gone on, the new windows, and I know the kids are probably looking forward to getting back into school on Monday. This was an exciting project, which was the Deriso Wellness Center. When I went there, pretty much it was inoperable. The fence had broken down. The nurses, when they were there, were terrified to go out and anybody to stay there by himself. And on many occasions, sadly, the building was being broken into. So we refenced it, and actually I have to thank my minister colleague from agriculture. There was a forestry house on the location, and we rehabilitated the house, and we now allow a constituent to live in the house, and he acts as a security guard, again, when you have the female nurses that are in the area. And it was one of the projects that was included with the British to upgrade it to be a smart facility. So it has backup generators, it has the water tanks, all the air conditions have been done, the security cameras have been put in, and the extra refrigeration put in. So again, very excited, because this is a project that regardless of whether you are Flabo or Labor, everybody benefits from health, education, and roads. Again, the Ministry of Agriculture assisted us. This facility was closed for many, many years, and we were able to get the cocoa fermentary working again. We are working with our cocoa farmers. In fact, I am overdue for a meeting with them to assist in expanding the production of cocoa in our constituency. I think that is one of the significant crops of the future, and because of its climate resilience, has a long ways to go. And I'm very excited by not only this facility, but if you also go to the next slide, the agro-processing facility, which I share with my colleague, Gail Rigobert, and to see the women particularly producing chocolate in that area, branded very well. She's assisted them in that regard, and production has been improving. We're in the process now of upgrading the road to that area, but this is something that we're very excited about. And when we finally do our own tea village in Deriso, at the Deriso Gap, at least we now know we're going to have product to be able for the farmers to be able to sell in those locations. You know, the rehabilitation of the Deriso Cemetery, you know, the road to the cemetery itself, the fencing in of the entire cemetery, and also the building of washroom facilities have all been completed. I want to thank my council members for their initiative on this project, and I know the community is very appreciative of the upgrading that we've had to the cemetery in general, and obviously the support facilities, so that when persons go there after being in church for a long time, and many times we walk down to the cemetery, that there are proper washroom facilities for them in that location. I don't know how many miles of drains that we have done in the constituency under the DVRP. And again, as Minister Joseph had articulated, none of these drains were done by any large construction companies. They went out to bid. We assisted many of the smaller contractors to learn how to participate in this. We broke it out into as many pieces, you know, and these are some of the unheralded stories, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes are lost in the detail. I remember after Hurricane Tomas, and many of the backhoe drivers and truck drivers were the ones that cleared the Bardlil. And I remember going there every day, not thinking that we were going to make it through, and being promised within 2 weeks that it would happen. And then when we started negotiating, Minister King, you'll remember, with CDB, and the conditions that they had put for the contracts actually would have made it prohibitive for us to have, or any of the local contractors to have participated. We took a very tough stance and felt that because those St. Lucian contractors had risked their lives at probably the most difficult time to clear it, they deserved to be able to finish it. And the minister fought very hard, along with Minister King, to convince CDB to break it down into smaller sizes. So I want to say that that battle started all the way in 2010 and 2011. And certainly once we've come into office, the minister has done an outstanding job. When the Labour Party came into office, Mr. Speaker, in 2012, there was over $63 million in DVRP that was ready to go because of Hurricane Tomas. And a very large part of that remained unspent. And it's Minister Joseph that not only was able to expend all that money, because this was the last year that we were allowed to use the money, but also fought very hard for these kinds of projects in my constituency, where we were able to break it down into smaller sizes to allow local and up and rising and up and coming contractors to participate in the program. Mr. Speaker, the road rehabilitation is extensive in my constituency, from Duga to La Couville, all the way to T-Rocher. The new road, well, I think we're going to be coming to it. This is some of the housing. So we had 50 or 45 houses, Mr. Speaker, of elderly people. These are some of the examples of what they were before and after, that we used the CDP program, and again, like the other areas where we got materials for them, and we got labor at cost to help refurbish the houses of these elderly people. We've specifically chosen elderly people, Mr. Speaker, because obviously they're at the tail end of their lives and do not have the resources, and many times their families don't have the resources to put them in better abodes. And so this is something we're very proud of, and I know the community is also very proud of. This is not something that we go around boasting about, because we really believe in the integrity and the respect and the dignity of many of the people in our constituency. They're very proud people, Mr. Speaker. And next term, one of the things we're really going to be working on now is eliminating the number of pit latrines that we have in our constituency to make sure that persons have proper washroom facilities in their home. The Blasha Community Center, which is also going to be our civil office center. So this is where the district rep and the constituency council's offices will be. This has been dilapidated for many, many, many years. And I know it was a very vexing issue for the persons in Blasha. As the minister indicated, it currently is under construction. I'm hoping that within the next couple of months that the project will be completed, but it's going to be a significant upliftment to the persons in the constituency. It is fully hurricane-proof, and it's also handicap-proof with ramps. So I'm very excited to see the development and the expansion of this community center. The Agile playing field, again, I want to thank the constituency council for putting the sidewalk and also building the fence, because the young guys who were playing there were constantly kicking the ball onto the main road. The next thing that we're going to be doing is regrassing it and also putting in lights so the young players can practice at nighttime. They will not be competitive lights, because we have the new lights in the Deraso playing field, but Ager, the La Couville field, and the Beauchamp field will all have lights that allow us to be able to play games and practice at the nighttime to increase the usage of the facilities that we have. This is the gem. As everybody knows, Deraso is known for its football. This is the heart, the nerve center of football in the constituency. I'm very happy that we've now completed the new turf in the location, and we've also now laid down all the wires. I believe the lights are here, and we're waiting for the poles to arrive any day now. And next to the facility is also a park. So the park will actually be a fitness park, which will have outdoor gym equipment and also a kids playing area. So as a parent, if you're walking early in the morning and you want to go and work out and you have your child with you, you can take your child can be on the playground and you can be working out. And certainly for the teams in the area, instead of having an indoor gym, we're going to have an outdoor gym. We're also going to be putting in new bleachers and also putting in an area for our vendors. Many of you, if you've been to Deraso to a football match, all the vendors are actually lined up on the street. So we're actually taking them off the street and putting a platform for them. So I'm very excited for us to be able to have our first tournament. I know I've been speaking to several of the ministers in the South for us to have a united football tournament, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that later this year. Hopefully the protocols would allow us to do so. The disaster vulnerability reduction contracts are the same drains we spoke about. We did training and they became certified, and this was the signing of them getting their contracts. And it was the drains and also retaining walls all throughout the constituency. So this was a very exciting project. It was taking place all during COVID. So again, it provided a significant amount of income support for many of the families in the constituency. The sad reality, we gave 140 contracts out during this period. As I keep saying to my constituencies, my constituents have 8,000 constituents. So it's not everybody who could give a contract. But we know that of the 140, that's many families that benefited from it. But also, it's the beginning of a lot of persons getting their own small business up together. You know, I'm often teased in my constituency, and I take it very well, and it's certainly something I have to aspire for, is many of the contractors in my constituency say they want Guy Joseph to come and represent them because of the outstanding job that he does with his contractors in his constituency. But you know, Guy knows that many, many years, persons changed over to the construction business in his constituency. But I certainly, I'm motivated as much as he is in order to be able to do that. So he does an outstanding job in representing the business people from his constituency, and I'm looking forward to following very quickly on his heels. The improving of the community access roads, the Blasha Road, London Road. Those of you who remember me taking with Mr. James, filling in a road with dirt and being ridiculed by my members, my opponents, when they said that they had a special surprise, a special weapon for the constituency, and that they said that that I was fooling the people of the constituency and fooling the people of St. Lucia because I was potholing it, and that everybody knew that when the first rains came that the potholes would go away. So I had made a promise to the persons living on London Road that this is one of the first roads that we would have done. We did this actually road within the first year of being elected, and I know that people are very, very happy. This is, again, some of the roads going throughout the constituency. We're talking about miles and miles of roads, of places that have been neglected for the longest time, in Duga, in Lacouville, and in Tiroche. This was, again, another very special place, Spring Road. Spring Road is a circular road, like a U road, and buses would not even go down this road. And really, honestly, even up to today, when you go down that road and you meet the families, they are so grateful for what this has done for them and the standard in which the roads were done in terms of the paved connections to each of their different lots. But more importantly now, buses are going down the area. People are inspired by what they're seeing, and they are now keen on inviting friends from neighboring constituencies to come visit them in their home. This is the pride that these roads create in their communities. In Bosha, many of the communities that have been neglected, Rishba and Rishba 2, they're being done as we speak right now. The Blasha main road, so as you know, we had done the Blasha road up until the Deriso Road up into Blasha, and we now completed it all the way through to Calypso. So again, I want to thank all of the persons living on that road for their patience. I want to thank the contractors and all the Ministry of Finance for assistance in getting it. This is a project that's been ongoing in our constituency for the longest time, going back to Sir John's days. This is next to the Agen school, and many persons who are squatting. We have over 190 persons living on this parcel of land. So we've now gotten planning approval, and it's been subdivided. In fact, I met with the community just this last weekend to finalize the prices for the lots. There are 90 or 100 additional lots which will be made available to, first of all, persons who are living in the area, in the Angers area. So I'm very excited that within the next couple of weeks, the surveyors would have completed and block and parcel numbers identified, and that's always keeping the community involved, because land is very dear to people's hearts. And again, even though persons have been living on this land informally, this is a huge opportunity for it to be formalized. We're going to be doing a similar project in Bosha, in Wishba as well. Again, I felt it was important because, again, on a conversation where we were talking about the East Castries constituency and some of the difficulties that that constituency has had in reaching its full potential. And I understand, because even for Micoud South, we're not going to reach our full potential unless we develop the South in its entirety. So Vieux Fort and the main city is critical to us being able to keep jobs in the South. And similarly for Castries East. Castries East is a suburb. And Castries Central is critical to the success of that. So I may be taking a different path than the leader of the opposition and the representative from Castries East, and that I've understood that, and that's why we're including the development of Vieux Fort as part of our overall plan. Too many young kids having to migrate up north, either to commute or to live up north, which divides the family and minimizes the resources of the family. So getting Vieux Fort going is important. So the DSH project, the land was there, and I said to the members, it was a tick farm. That's what it was producing. No jobs, no output. And the fact is, we came along, and the part of the land that's being leased is for the horse racing track. And in return for leasing the horse racing track, the developer has taken his own money. And I want to repeat that, taken his own money, over $30 million US, to develop a world-class horse racing track that he promised. And has he done that? The answer is yes. He said that he would create a world-class horse race. Did he do that? Well, in December of 2019, he did that. And as we speak today, there are still young people being employed. And my understanding is there are 40 new horses that are going to come in, because some of the other horse racing tracks in the region are struggling. And now we're going to be sending horses here to St. Lucia to house them here. So we know, again, that that project is poised for a significant takeoff. And I have many young men in my constituency, and even some women, who don't want to be in an office job, Mr. Speaker, who like dealing with animals and want to know now the opportunity of participating in the horse race at this level is available to them in here in St. Lucia, and are excited about the opportunity of seeing this project succeed. Every time we were having events there, the number of young kids that were volunteering and participating and being there on that day and seeing them all dressed up and being able to get training on how to be tellers. These are new opportunities, Mr. Speaker, that didn't exist. And guess what? This was a piece of land that was not being developed. So 200 plus acres was leased to DSH in return for them to build the horse racing track. And now the horse racing track has been built. The expansion of the project is continuing. What happened to the project, Mr. Speaker, is very simple. COVID affected China before it affected us. And so the manufacturing plants for those hotels were shut down. They have now been reopened, but demand is so high, we're now trying to get the whole thing back going. But I can assure members, Mr. Speaker, that this project is very much alive and on track, And we're very excited about the expansion opportunities of the university hospital, the small hospital, and the real estate development that's going to be taking place specifically in the old Beausaint-Joux. The Beausaint-Joux farm has now been moved to Volette. I'm very excited to see the development we have there. The new private jet facility in Vieux Fort has now created new jobs and upgraded how people are being received when they come on private planes, and we've seen a significant uptake in the number of private planes coming into St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. The Sandy Beach, the Andesab project, again, about doing things to allow St. Lucians to participate in the biggest industry in our country. So we're taking 100 acres of land, subdividing it. All the plans have been approved in planning. The last issue that we had to resolve was with SLASPA. As you can see, it's very close to the runway as to what the actual heights of the buildings can be and how far away from the fence we're allowed to develop. I believe that that's now been formalized, and work will begin very soon on the subdivision, and once we do the subdivision, to be able to sell lots to St. Lucians. So that you now can buy a piece of property that has water, electricity, sewage system, and actually has a rational plan. And therefore, the land is actually beachfront land. So the concrete road will become the boardwalk. We're not developing anything other than support facilities on the beach, lifeguard stations, some food outlets, some washroom facilities, some recreational facilities, but we're not building any hotels or apartments on the beach itself. And again now, so everybody who has their business on the other side of the boardwalk has beachfront land. And along with the plans of bringing in a cruise ship terminal into Vieux Fort, this is going to be a significant benefit to local St. Lucians. And the Airbnb projects, the village tourism project that we're doing, all tie in perfectly to what we're currently doing on this location. You know, Mr. Speaker, I heard the members from the opposite side say, oh, the only problem that they had was that they didn't understand the details. It seems to be a recurring theme, Mr. Speaker. I find myself coming to this House and having to repeat ourselves over and over again on basic issues. We had the issue of CIP, if you remember, as to how did it work. We brought documents, we showed where the money was, and yet there was these constant red flags being raised by the members on the opposite side. Ojo's no different. We said from day one, went to see Ojo Labs, which was artificial intelligence, and no leader of the opposition. It's not mind-bending technology. It's commonplace technology that is showing that it has a significant role to play in the world. You see? So, Mr. Speaker, Ojo Labs is very, very simple. This was a building facility that had been empty for 26 years. Let me say that again. The building itself had been empty for 26 years. And Invest St. Lucia spent around $3.5 million, Mr. Speaker, in rehabilitating this facility to become a call center to the standard of Ojo. So when Ojo was starting up in Austin, Texas, they were getting all these incentives, and we were the ones trying to convince them to come to St. Lucia. Luckily for us, the investors in Ojo had actually been in St. Lucia before and liked St. Lucia. In fact, they own property at Sugar Beach. So we said, look, we will outfit the building for you, and what we're going to do is for the first 18 months, we're going to subsidize the salaries. So in the first 6 months of a person coming to be employed at the facility, we will pay $1,000. And for the next year, we'll pay $500 a month. And we would do that for the first 400 employees, and we would only subsidize them for the 18 months. That's it. And Ojo, in return, move their facility here, pay rent on the facility to pay back for the capital costs that we have. And the salaries are from $2,500 to $4,000 plus. So they're paying that difference. So today as we speak, the vast majority of persons who are currently working at Ojo, their entire salary is being paid for by Ojo themselves. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, there was no call centers in the South. And I never heard the opposition talk about bringing call centers to the South, even though those facilities were sitting there empty. Even though when you looked at the level of unemployment of young people, it was much greater in the South than it was in anywhere else in St. Lucia. But there was never the thought or the idea of doing this. But after being successful with it, if I can see the next photograph, next slide, because of the success of Ojo, all of a sudden, when we brought companies to St. Lucia, we brought them to the South. And we had proof to show them that the young people in the South were capable. And artificial intelligence is a grade up from the call from the BPO services. And so what happened is ITEL BPO came here. And they're excited because now they have a training ground. So persons who are at ITEL BPO can potentially upgrade to Ojo. I say upgrade because some people prefer working at ITEL BPO. And likewise, persons who find Ojo and they may be laid off now have the opportunity of going to work at ITEL BPO. And ITEL BPO have been so excited because again, this was a building that was dormant for over 26 years. Same deal, put in the capital investment for the building, but this time we didn't have to subsidize the jobs because Ojo was the catalyst to break ground to show that we could make this thing happen in the South. And I'm hoping that the members on the opposite side now who seem to have changed their mind and are now saying, I don't know if it's true because that's what they're saying today, they have a habit of flip-flopping pretty quickly. Today, they're saying that they're not going to close down the labs, but previously they said they were going to shut them down. I get confused sometimes, Mr. Speaker, because sometimes they change so fast, the vacuum, the wind is very disturbing. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that they're going to be genuine and true to their word this time, Mr. Speaker, that they are, if they do happen to win by half chance, that they're going to maintain the jobs in the South. But I can say to the young people that it was the United Workers' Party and this administration that created the opportunity. And I'm very proud to say that ITEL BPO started off, Mr. Speaker, with 400 jobs. They have now added another 400, and I'm very, very excited that they have agreed and signed off on a third building in the back, Mr. Speaker, to add another 400 jobs. So between ITEL BPO and Ojo Labs, Mr. Speaker, they're paying salaries in the tune of about $4.5 million a month. $54 million a year, Mr. Speaker, of monies that are being injected into all these households in the South. And that doesn't include the bus transportation and the food feeding programs and everything that's taking place. So, Mr. Speaker, when you go around and you see the level of activity in the South, it didn't happen by chance. The next one we had was the Fokapesh. I mean, our candidate in that constituency took me up to that community. I was flabbergasted. But again, it reminded me very much of what I had seen in Castries East, where you have a problem where persons are suffering in an area, and in this particular area, they did not have water in their homes. They had a spring pipe, and instead of trying to bring waters to the households, which is commonplace today, what did they do? They built steps and concreted the platform where the spring water was, which was to say, this is the solution to your problem. So I'm very happy that Mr. London was very persistent and pushing WASCO and pushing all of the levers of government to make sure that water has now been connected. It has been done so. And I say that because, again, this allegation that, and I'll get to it, the new thing that they're calling, as they call the Belrose Doctrine, right, of which there's no evidence of. The fact is that this government has treated every constituency fairly. There is not a constituency that we have left behind when it comes to education, healthcare, security, or infrastructure. Very focused on making those things happen, and that's a great example. So congratulations, Mr. London. I'm very excited that the new WASCO headquarters for the South is very nearing completion. Designed by St. Lucians, being constructed by St. Lucians, And I think it's going to raise the profile and the standard of the South and really allow the people in the South to know that they matter. The View to Fort water supply project. Again, $85 million project of increasing the water production from 1 million gallons a day to 4.5 million gallons a day. And I've been seeing work going on every day in putting new pipes to Labrie, View Fort North, and View Fort South. And again, these are projects that have been ongoing during this COVID period in which people are getting jobs for construction, jobs for transportation, and are pumping money into the constituency. I mean, go ahead. The Hunor Airport. There's 3,000 piles being done right now. I mean, I went there the other day. I was just shocked to see the amount of steel. Some of these steel pipes are going down as deep as 100 feet. So it means that you're putting about 8, 9 pieces of steel together, steel bending, and connecting them all. And the number of people I saw working there was just amazing. And that's just on the foundation. So once the pile driving is completed, then the physical foundation starts coming in. The steel structure for the building and the glassing of the building will follow very quickly. But again, these are jobs during this very difficult period that's bringing money home to people. And this is why when you go down to Clark Street on any day of the week, you see more activity than we've seen ever before. This is why when the fishermen bring their fish home, that their fish gets sold because people have money in their pocket to be able to go and buy. And where it may be that some people have lost their job, other people in their family members have gotten jobs in the construction era. So again, go ahead. St. Jude's. You know, for almost a 9-10 month period, talking about $1.8 million in salaries that were being paid out on a monthly basis. And this was impacting Labrie, Choiseul, Micoud, and the View Forts. But again, you know, when you go and you physically walk, and hopefully the minister takes up the minister's offer and has the technical meeting in terms of reviewing, I don't know how you go and have a site inspection without actually going and understanding the entire project and as how we got there. So it's good to know from the fire the decisions that were made. Then when the new government came in, the decisions that were made, and when our new government came in, the decisions were made. Let's put it all on the table and review it. It's to the benefit of everybody to do that. But this is a world-class hospital that's not just going to meet the needs of the South today, but is being built in anticipation of an airport that is 3 times the size of what we currently have, with the ambition of having a cruise ship home port that's going to be there, to convert the old building into a university facility, with the expansion of the DSH project, the expansion of the Sandy Beach project. You have to build for the future. And it's real. So, Mr. Speaker, the next thing I would like to do, because you hear things, and I know that the general public must be confused sometimes when they hear some of these things, because some persons can be very convincing. Particularly my very dear friend, I don't know what I've done to him these days, my dear friend from Chastanet South, who gave a very emotional, bitter kind of presentation. And I think that he's a lot better than that. And then I was very shocked this morning, this morning, when I heard the leader of the opposition repeat some of this stuff. We're suggesting that the hotel projects that have been outlined were never true. Never true. This was a blatant lie by me and by my cabinet and by the government to fool the people of St. Lucia. So I just wanted to take the time, Mr. Speaker, if I could, just to go through some of these things to clarify some of the issues. So let's take the Sandals project. So the Sandals project was a 340-room hotel that was announced by Sandals when Mr. Stewart was with us. There were several press conferences. The designs were done. The funding was approved. The plans for the project were approved. And in fact, the project had actually begun. And when it began, there was then an injunction filed by the Landings Hotel against the DCA, indicating that they didn't believe that Sandals, well, actually the DCA, they didn't believe that the DCA had gone through the full process, even though there were 2 environmental studies that were done and that there was communication with the Landings group, although it was not required to do so. Now, Mr. Stewart felt very nervous because this was going to be the largest investment that his company was ever going to make. And he certainly did not want to find himself in a position of having to start and mobilize, and then now an injunction was filed against him. And so he decided to wait for the outcome of the court case. I was disappointed, but it's the gentleman's money. He's a very prudent business person, and I could not convince him otherwise. Well, the government won the case, and immediately upon winning the case, Landings now have filed an appeal on the case. So the project was held up. Is it the government's fault? Is it that it was not a real project? Is it that the Sandals, I want to ask, did Sandals not own the land? Was it fake that they had planning approval? Was it fake that I met the bankers who would approve the loans? Is it fake that they mobilized? I say not. And certainly even now with the passing of Mr. Stewart, and in speaking to his son Adam, they've indicated that they are interested in continuing the project, and they will be reverting back to me within the next couple of days to announce how they intend to proceed with the project. And I'm very excited, told them that we would have our full support on that project. The Rex project. We came in, the gentleman, Mr. Karaya, and his wife died, and his lands went into a trust. I think that the member from the opposite side would know that. And the trust had a squabble internally because the sons and the daughters were fighting with the trust as to who really retained control. That was finally settled in court, and the trust now took over the project. The trust decided, after discussions with the government, because we felt that the standard of the hotel that was there was not in keeping with the standard and the quality of the piece of property. And remember that that land is entirely on Queen's Chain. There's no freehold in that location. So the Royal St. Lucian, the Rex, and the Papillon are all on Queen's Chain. And so we felt that if we were going to renew the lease on this, it had to be with a much more significant and meaningful investment. So the Rex people entered, thank you, into a discussion with Hilton Hotels, and a design with Hilton was completed, and they were in the process of submitting their plans. Very soon after that, the trust was approached by the Royalton Group, which is owned Sunwing, and Sunwing decided to now go into partnership with Rex, not only in St. Lucia, but in the entire Caribbean, because they have properties in Grenada, they have properties in Antigua, and also in Tobago. And make all those things happen. And I think yesterday the Minister of Tourism read and distributed a letter from Marriott. So what has happened now is Marriott has gone into partnership with Sunwing. And so they've decided now not to do a Royalton or Sunwing brand there, and they've decided to do a Marriott brand. So we did receive a letter from the head of development for Marriott confirming that and indicating that very shortly they will be making a decision on the selection of the brand for that property, and we hope we can get it done. So is this fake? Was this untrue? Was the government lying in any way? Were there several times we felt that we were on the verge of getting a project off the ground? The answer is yes. But things happen. And that's why I said as a leader, you have to adapt. Point Seraphin. We had a Bulgarian company here. In fact, the members on the opposite side ones who brought the Bulgarian company here to St. Lucia. And the Bulgarian company were going to do 2 projects, the Saboshab project as well as Point Seraphin. And as the project was about to begin, plans were being approved, the Bulgarian company got involved and embroiled into a major investigation in Bulgaria, that there was allegations of money laundering, there was allegations that they were involved in killing a journalist. So after a period of time, Mr. Speaker, the Bulgarian company had been cleared, both of the killing as well as the money laundering. But sadly, the reputation is there, and some of our indigenous banks have refused to give them a bank account in order to be able to get the projects off the ground. The Bulgarian company, being very mindful of their commitment to St. Lucia, agreed to bring in a new company to take over the Sabasha project. And they did so. And when they took over the Sabasha project, as you know, Mr. Speaker, it was originally a Fairmont. And they decided after 6 months not to go with Fairmont. And they decided now to go with a new brand. They selected Hyatt, a Grand Hyatt, and now the plans have been submitted. And what we are with the Ministry of Infrastructure, finalizing the new road to go through, of which the developer has agreed to do a DFC, so that means that they will finance and build the road once we've agreed on where the road is going to go. And the other developer are now, their partner, their new partner for Point Seraphin is in quarantine as we speak and is looking to get going. So again, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking you, was it fake? Was somebody lying to anybody? This is what the reality is. This is the world that we live in. This is how quickly things change. But to suggest that the government and myself blatantly lied to people about these projects is not true. Canals. When we came in, the Canals project had been approved by the former government. The developers could not bring up the money, Mr. Speaker. So after going through an EIA with them, monies were not forthcoming. The government had to reacquire the land, and then we're now working with a new company, to develop it. So, Mr. Speaker, Canals is now in an advanced stage. The plans were approved. When the construction was about to start, my good friends at National Trust again brought up this issue about archaeological artifacts there. A separate independent entity was brought in from Martinique. I believe Invest and Lucia were the ones who helped facilitate that. And a new protocol was put in place, but no artifacts were found after they did, I think it was about 80 or 90 different drill pits. It could be more. And a protocol was established that if in fact they do find anything, they would be able to take care of that.
Honorable Prime Minister, I must indicate to you at this time, although I did not indicate earlier, that you are running out of time and you should be wrapping up.
Good night. Half an hour.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to request a suspension of 4210 to allow the Honorable Prime Minister another 30 minutes.
Honorable members, the question is that Standing Order 4210 be invoked and allow the Honorable Prime Minister an additional 40 minutes in which to complete. I now put the question, as many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as were contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. Shock. All the monies have been paid for the land. All plans have been submitted. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, with COVID, one of the partners, which is a huge investor out of Mexico and the Dominican Republic, clearly those destinations have been impacted significantly. And also with Hyatt, they've agreed to wait until they can start seeing something happening with COVID. They can have better projections. But they've indicated to me as soon as they have gotten through those hurdles that they will proceed. Was that fake, Mr. Speaker?
Honorable Prime Minister, just give me a second. I know the time is fast approaching. I know member has to leave. Before you leave, the Parliament had in fact, the member for Vieux-Fort North is not there, but in honor of member for Vieux-Fort North, yourself, member for Castries South East, member for Soufrière, and member for Babonneau, the Parliament staff had decided to celebrate your birthdays, though belated, with a cake. So on your way out, honorable member, you could surely cut the cake and leave for the other members. Continue, Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, DSH and also the cruise ship terminal. We're in constant contact with Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and MSC. I can assure you all the technical studies are still being worked upon, and we are still committed and moving forward because we believe that this is a project that makes a lot of sense, and so do the developers and the investors. So, Mr. Speaker, we believed in these projects enough that, again, even in the projections for the 2019 budget, they were there, like were some of our road projects. But again, in the times that we are, it's very difficult to anticipate some of the hurdles that are going to be thrown at you along the way. And so we want to make sure that we can do that. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure members on the other side, but more importantly, I want to assure the general public of St. Lucia that these are real projects. These are real people and real investors. And I'm not going to sit here and get into the debate as to whether the opposition should have been threatening investors, whether they should come to St. Lucia, and what they would do to them if they get into office. Those are things that we have to work through, and we continue to work through, and it's all part of the life cycle of getting projects off the ground. But this government remains committed. The developers and investors know that this government is sincere and that we are people of our word, and we attempt to try to get the best deal for St. Lucia and ultimately for the people of this country. You know, Mr. Speaker, another thing that keeps coming up, I see that they can't help themselves, is this whole idea of FFF. You know, as if this is some novel thing. And you know, the members on the opposite side, Mr. Speaker, believe that you can just come up with slogans and somehow that's going to carry weight. And it's the hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker, I have to tell you, that the members on the other side continue to display. I mean, this is the same party that had the Jafali affair. Who was he? A Saudi Arabian billionaire who was getting divorced. And they decided to give him a diplomatic passport. And it wasn't me saying that. That's the courts that said that. The British courts. And all the evidence is there to support that. To give him a diplomatic passport in order for him to be protected against his wife who was taking him to court. How did that benefit the people of St. Lucia? We still can't get to the bottom of it. Why would they have done that? Did they decide now that the cause was going to be divorced men? They feel that they were being aggrieved and somehow they had to come to their rescue? What's the logic? Robert Ainsworth, a person that nobody in St. Lucia even met, and you gave him 3,000 acres of land. You approved all of his incentives. You allowed him to get CIP. You even allowed him, Mr. Speaker, to get the rights to mining the land that he was going to buy. It's in the letter. It's in the letter. You approved it on the condition that he bought the land. So it means that before he bought the land, he knew that he was already going to get the incentives. He had it in a document. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't understand. So isn't Robert Ainsworth a foreigner? Who is he? You can't even find him online. Oh, he must be. Okay, he's from Castries, I'm being told. Greinberg. Where's Greinberg? Who is he? How is he connected to St. Lucia? Why is it the former Prime Minister would just go and sign a document and give him the rights to mine the seabed of our country without going? He never went to his cabinet colleagues. Did his cabinet colleagues ever say, Prime Minister, we're going to rebuke you because you didn't do that? I didn't hear. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say to Dr. Anthony, Kenny Anthony, that he did something wrong by a member of his party. They all stay moo-moo. Rochamel. Why would they do it? Was he not foreigners? How did it benefit St. Lucia? Where did the $30 million go? Robert Lindquist. Why would you secretly do this deal where you contract this person to do a forensic audit? You spend $1 million US on this audit. Nobody in St. Lucia knew about it. senior civil servants did things that I still have to scratch my head and ask myself, what was going on? So what? It's only when United Workers' Party is in office that we have to work with foreigners that becomes a bad thing. But when you're in office and you have to work with foreigners, it's okay. Yet, one of the leading authorities on economic development, Sir Arthur Lewis, wrote a whole paper on what? Development by investment. Invitation by investment, same thing. So to do what? Bring foreign and direct investment to help expand the capacity of your country. And Mr. Speaker, you know, when we now talk about Cabot, and again, it's okay for the surrogates of a political party to say things, but when you hear the leader of that party espouse the same nonsense, I'm perplexed. I get worried. So this simplicity idea of Cabot, that somehow NIC should have not made the loan, that the Cabot company should have not been able to allow to develop the site, and instead we should have created a consortium of people to do what? To put the infrastructure in 400 acres of land. Cabot is going to spend over $250 million US in investment. You really believe that NIC would have done that? NIC would have been able to get Ben Crenshaw to come and build a golf course? So, and even this idea that they're saying, well, they bought the land at $2.50 a square foot and people are buying the land for $300. Is it apples to apples? Are people coming down and buying the same land in the same condition as the $2.50? No! They're buying the land because there is a golf course being developed, because there's roads and sewage, and the reputation of what is being done. And they're also building the homes. I mean, Mr. Speaker, the naivety. It's unbelievable. And that naivety is no different, Mr. Speaker. I mean, I have not had a time to examine it, but certainly on my initial thoughts is when I hear the members on the opposite side, the desperation of winning the election, to go and say that they're going to waive the first $48,000 of a person's income and not pay salaries. On a very quick calculation, that's somewhere between $60 million that they're going to give up. 60 million. 60 million. And I don't understand. Okay? So you're going to give away, you're going to waive the income tax up until $48,000. You're going to not collect property taxes. You're going to not do the CXC cost, right? So you're going to forego all of this revenue, yet your costs are remaining the same. Where is it going to come from? And so, Mr. Speaker, guess what? Yeah, it can't raise, but something has to go up. So let's say that the Labour Party is going to do their typical thing again, we call it Kenny and Tony. So what they're going to give you on one side, they're going to take away on the next side. So what are they going to take away on the next side? Is VAT rate's going to go up. So imagine a person who currently is paying $18,000 and is not paying any taxes on that $18,000, Mr. Speaker. Okay? And now it goes to $48,000, the threshold. The $18,000 person is no better off because he was already getting the incentive. And if you now turn around and you increase the VAT rate, they're going to be worse off. There's no free lunch in this, Mr. Speaker. The operating costs of this government, I keep on saying, 3 cost centers mainly. Payroll, $540 million a year. $300 million a year in interest payments and principal payments. And $400 million on basic operations. It doesn't include all the other stuff. You know, so when the member wants to go and start talking numbers, I sit there and I ran the numbers. Current revenue in 2014-15 was $915 million. In 18-19 was 1.15 million. And in 2021, it went back to 890. So to Minister's point, imagine with COVID, we were only $25 million short of what their current revenue was. When you talk about GDP growth, the debt grew under their term by over $880 million. Up until 2020, our debt grew by $322 million. And yet, they were getting no growth, unemployment was high, etc. And even the simplicity of which the member on the opposite side, the leader of the opposition, took the juxtaposed position I said is, imagine if you had COVID in 2014-15, what would have happened? Well, he needs to understand that when he started in 2014 and 15, his revenue was only $915 million. When we started in 2019, we had $1.155 million. So he's starting at a lower position. His unemployment was already at 25%. His youth unemployment was already at 44%. And to his own admission, Mr. Speaker, they couldn't borrow any money. So what, you really believe in that particular condition, Mr. Speaker, that they would have been able to convince the World Bank and the IMF and CDB to have lent them the money? No, they wouldn't have. They didn't do it to everybody. No, no. Dominica's debt had been forgiven, and their debt to GDP when they got the money was substantially lower. Yours was not. You, to your own admission, Mr. Speaker, your Minister of Finance said our house was not in order. That is why they couldn't lend us the money. Our house was not in financial order. That is what the problem is. So all of a sudden to come and say that you would have gotten $20 million and that this is how you're going to spend the money, Mr. Speaker, I mean, have they lost it? To come here and try to fool people and say to the people of St. Lucia, the only amount of money that we spent was $9 million. Really? Mr. Speaker, let me get the number here. Mr. Speaker, we spent over $40 million on the hotels and on the respiratory centers, giving people vaccines, all of these things here to support people. I mean, this is the problem you have, Mr. Speaker. When you have members on the opposite side, and it would be okay, Mr. Speaker, if in fact they had not been in government before. You can give them an excuse. You could say, okay. But these are people who've been there for 15 years in office and 25 years. So, Mr. Speaker, let me move on. But I have not used the excuse of being naive. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to end my presentation how I'm not even going to get into the whole debt remanagement, everything else. I really want, Mr. Speaker, to close by saying a couple of things. One, on every single occasion that my party has been in power, it has taken St. Lucia forward. Can the same be said of our friends on the other side? We build up, they on the other side pull down. We establish and maintain structures and institutions. They rename and neglect them. We invite investors to our country to help us to provide good-paying jobs for our people. They chase away and discourage them with threats and accusations, and they still do. They have lived in a glass house for 15 years and now dare to pick up stones. Dare to accuse, dare to advise. Their legacy of mismanagement and abject performance has been recorded for prosperity. And some names will forever live in infamy. Names like Rochamel, Greinberg, Jufali, NCA, and in terms like cost overruns and a lack of transparency and accountability. We are still awaiting an account for the funds given to the NCA. Mr. Speaker, we on this side are in the habit of cleaning up after labor has departed, and we've been doing it again. In place of their successive years of economic decline, we have produced successive years of growth and created the platform on which future growth will be built on. Cabot's early settlement with NIC, what it means is losses to St. Lucia, but they don't see it that way. NIC got its loan paid prematurely, and we lost millions of dollars in interest. In fact, almost 1/4 of the money that NIC put into income support could have been recovered on that one loan by itself. Mr. Speaker, ours is a story of delivery. We said we wanted to reduce the tax burden on our people by reducing VAT. We did so. We created revenue streams that would help us fund large-scale investments, and they are so necessary in this country. We said that we needed to stimulate real growth and reduce unemployment. And prior to COVID, we had done just that. We said that the key sectors of our economy had to be modernized and rebuilt, and we continue to walk along that path. Mr. Speaker, we've had a productive 5 years and have not wasted our time in office. We are workers. Our vision remains focused on a sense of urgency and a recommitment to continue to build the new St. Lucia that we set out to do from the onset of our administration. If anyone has wasted the last 5 years, Mr. Speaker, it is clearly the opposition, which has repeatedly failed to comply with the norms of parliamentary decorum expected of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. One has only to take a look at their performance in this Honourable House since 2016. On every occasion, at the opening of Parliament, they have chosen to disrespect the office of the head of the state by walking out during the delivery of the throne speech. Even when His Excellency delivers his speech via Zoom, Mr. Speaker, they still show their disrespect. How utterly ridiculous. Have we ever seen anything so pathetic, immature, and devoid of substance? Is that the behavior of a party that is ready to assume the leadership of St. Lucia? Really? Contrary to their repeated claims of two St. Lucia and some kind of dualism in our country, we have pursued and promoted policies based on the inclusivity in which all St. Lucians are able to benefit. Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the Appropriations Bill. I believe that the members on my side have put a very powerful case, and I think that the display and the presentations that they've all made, not only in their constituencies, but of the work that they have done in their ministries, is commendable. And as I've indicated, Mr. Speaker, the true tale here, the true litmus test of what we've achieved is the ability to have absorbed COVID. And while there are people who are suffering in our country, there is no doubt about that, Mr. Speaker. I think that if, in fact, it had not been for this government, United Workers' Party, and our ability to have moved fast, to be inclusive in our approach, and with the level of confidence that people have in us, that many more people would have suffered, and the situation would have been substantially worse. We are still not out of the woods. We have a lot of work to do, Mr. Speaker. This budget is just a continuation of the journey. And I want to say to all my fellow St. Lucians, let's keep working.
Honourable members, the question is that the Appropriation 2021-2022 bill be read a second time. I now put a question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to provide for the services of the State of St. Lucia for the year ending on the 31st day of March, 2022.
Honorable members, let's review the bill. Clause 2.
Appropriation of $1,638,600,900 for the services of the State of St. Lucia for the year 2021-2022.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Schedule.
Section 2.
Schedule stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honorable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put a question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, I beg to report that the Appropriation 2021-2022 bill went through committee stage with no amendments. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill read a third time and passed.
Honorable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Appropriation 2021-2022 bill be read a third time and passed. I now put that question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This Act may be cited as the Appropriation Act 2021-2022. Appropriation of $1,638,600,900 for services of the State of St. Lucia for the year 2021-2022.
Motion. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it is provided by Section 3 of the National Savings and Development Bonds Act, Cap 1525, that under the authority of the resolution of Parliament, that the Minister of Finance may raise by the issue of savings bonds inside and outside of St. Lucia, money up to the amount of $2,400,000,000 for financing such capital or other expenditure and for such debt refinancing as he or she determines. And whereas it is further provided under Section 4 of the National Savings and Development Bonds Act, Cap 1525, that the bonds shall be issued in such a form and on such terms and conditions as the Minister of Finance directs. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to raise on the regional government securities market or through private placement at a maximum rate of 7%, the amount of EC dollars 237,200,000 for financing the 2021-22 budget, and the amount of EC dollars 383,700,000 for refinancing existing debts. Be it resolved that the Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to raise the regional government securities market or through private placement at a maximum rate of 7%. The amount of EC dollars 237,200,000 for financing 2021-22 budget. The amount of EC dollars 383,700,000 for refinancing existing debts. Mr. Speaker, Section 3 of the National Savings and Development Bonds Act, Cap 1525, provides that the Ministry of Finance may raise money up to the amount of EC dollars 2.4 billion through the issuance of savings bonds inside and outside of St. Lucia for financing both capital and other expenditure and for such debt refinancing as he or she determines necessary. Further, Mr. Speaker, Section 4 of the National Savings and Development Bonds Act, Cap 1525, allows for bonds to be issued in such form and on such terms and conditions as the Minister of Finance directs. Mr. Speaker, This resolution is therefore placed before Parliament to seek approval to borrow by the way of bond financing as follows. A, $237.2 million for financing the 2021-22 budget through the issuance of bonds in the regional government securities market or through private placement at a maximum rate of 7%. B, $383.7 million for refinancing of the existing debts through the issuance of bonds on the regional government securities market or through private placement at a maximum rate of 7%. Mr. Speaker, a component of the budget, as outlined in my presentation, in support of the Appropriation Bill, must be financed through the issuing of bonds and Treasury bills in an effort to address adequately the financing gap which has occurred during the lower projected local revenue as a result of the economic contraction from COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the increased expenditures required to fund the operations of central government. Mr. Speaker, our country has utilized the RGSM as a reliable source for raising much-needed financing to support the national budget since 2004, and this is a practice that we have continued to date. In addition, the loans that the government has contracted on highly concessionary terms, we believe that we will be able to raise additional funds to close the financing gap by means of bonds and Treasury bills in keeping with our debt management strategy. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has adversely affected lives and livelihoods locally and across the globe. The negative impact of the pandemic on St. Lucia's productive capacity is directly correlated with the performance of the fiscal accounts. Our fiscal space has been largely constrained by the low performance of central government's revenue and increased expenditures due to COVID-19. This has restricted the extent to which new policy measures can be adopted to provide adequate stimulus to mitigate the economic shocks from the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, securing adequate financing options for this year's budget is critical to the government's ability to continue its nationwide recovery efforts and to minimize the impact of COVID-19, especially in relation to providing support to households and businesses, strengthening social protection systems for the most vulnerable, enhancing our technology and digital and infrastructural capacity, ensuring businesses' continuity, strengthening the resilience of our country to mitigate climate change, natural disasters and other shocks, and most importantly, securing the lives and livelihoods of our people. Mr. Speaker, as indicated earlier, this year's budget seeks to mitigate the adverse effects of the pandemic on the health and well-being of our citizens, to instill confidence in the resilience of our nation, to support the economic recovery strategy of the government, and to reposition our country to take full advantage of the global rebound. Notwithstanding the fiscal challenges which began in the fiscal year 2021 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government is optimistic in successfully undertaking 2021-22 borrowing requirement of EC $237.2 million in bonds from the capital market to finance the 2021-22 budget. Mr. Speaker, although investor sentiments are difficult to predict at this time, we remain confident that there will be a turnaround in the market in the coming months, resulting in an uptake in government securities and investment. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Finance will continue to work closely with the brokers to source funding from non-traditional sources and will also engage our traditional investors. The investor relations strategy, which was adopted during the fiscal year 2020-21, will be utilized to obtain the requisite funding to support this year's budget. In addition, given the reduction in the minimum savings rate established by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank from 3% to 2%, it is our view that the investors would be more inclined to invest in government securities rather than other financial products of similar risk. It is this government intention to reissue its maturing instruments of $383.7 million in bonds. These bonds have tenures ranging from 2 years to 10 years. Investor outlook for the coming months will play an important part in the ability to raise the required levels of new funding. Mr. Speaker, the government was able to roll over approximately 75% of its debt instruments during the fiscal year 2020-2021. While there is much uncertainty in the global market, government bonds remain a relatively secure form of investment when compared to equity. Hence, it is expected that the investment market will respond well to our investment product offerings. Mr. Speaker, you would have noted that the budget estimates indicated an amount of EC $240.86 million to be borrowed through bonds and treasury bills, whereas the resolution is seeking the approval of EC $237.2 million to be borrowed via bonds. The difference of EC $3.66 million will be raised through the issuance of treasury bills. Mr. Speaker, the issuing of treasury bills does not require the approval of Parliament, hence the resolution only covers the amounts to be raised in bonds. Mr. Speaker, all debt issued by the government of St. Lucia becomes a charge on the consolidated fund. Therefore, the EC $237.2 million in bonds will incur interest ranging from 3.5% to 7%, which is consistent with the competitive market rates for government securities. This will amount to a maximum of EC $16.4 million in interest on an annual basis. Mr. Speaker, with this being said, I present this resolution to this Honourable House for approval. I trust that the funds which will be raised on the RGSM and those acquired through private placement by way of government securities will contribute to closing the financing gap in 2021-2022 budget, as this will provide the central government the necessary fiscal buffer as we continue our recovery and rebuilding efforts toward a more resilient economy. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to raise on the regional government securities market or for private placement at a maximum rate of 7%. A, the amount of Eastern Caribbean $247,200,000 for the financing the 2021-2022 budget. B, the amount of Eastern Caribbean dollars $383,700,000 for refinancing existing debts. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank both yourself as well as all of our parliamentarian colleagues for their support and work during the last couple of days of this budget process. I want to thank my staff at the Ministry of Finance, as well as my Attorney General's office, the staff of NTN, the police officers that are here in support of us, as well as the staff downstairs that feed us every day and create the great hospitality. I think that my Attorney General would be remiss if I did not also thank the Princery, again, under very difficult circumstances, who continue to rise to an amazing occasion. So again, I'm going to ask the Attorney General, but also I'm going to ask my Cabinet Secretary to please give them a special level of commendation for the work that they have done. And lastly, I want to thank all of my colleagues for the work that you've put in for the last 5 years and the budgets that we've presented and the emotion that you put into what we're trying to achieve, and that we all truly understand what we're trying to overcome. And I would also like to thank my colleagues on the other side for their continual efforts to point out the shortcomings in our policies, and it is always very much appreciated. And again, I hope that you are not disappointed in the results that we've been able to produce. But again, I want to thank you very, very much. And again, Mr. Speaker, thank you that you've done human work during these periods by yourself. Again, the reluctance of my members on the opposite side to simply appoint a deputy speaker that holds no other position other than to really provide relief for you. But I'm hopeful that maybe in the next elections, when they find themselves in the same position, that they will certainly consider taking up the post of deputy speaker. Sorry? Mr. Speaker, be very, very remiss again, to congratulate our youth. if there is ever a segment of our society that's been hit very hard by COVID and that have responded to the extent that they have, I mean, just the enthusiasm in a very difficult period, that when we approached them about participating in the Prime Minister's playlist and doing some of the things that they're accustomed to doing live, to do them virtually, and just the enthusiasm and the hope that they continue to show. And I'm hoping that in our own way, with what we've been doing with the call centers, what we've been doing with the construction projects, and certainly now trying to build a borderless country that they could now participate in the global economy. So again, I want to thank the Ministry of Youth for all the work that they're doing in that regard. And I know that there are many better days ahead, and we will continue to build a new St. Lucia. So let's keep working. Thank you. I beg that we suspend this House sine die.
Honorable members, on your behalf and behalf of the staff, I join the Prime Minister in expressing gratitude. Let me just put another hat on quickly as a member of the centenary celebrations of the St. Mary's Anglican Church at Lakai, Dennery, and I know the member and representative for Dennery South will so appeal to members. On the 21st of July, the church celebrates 100 years since its establishment, and I know that as the committee, we reach out to individual members, especially the Minister for Ecclesiastic Affairs, the Prime Minister, and everyone to join us in the celebration of 100 years of St. Mary's Anglican Lakai on July 21st, 2021. Honorable members, the question is that this House stand adjourned sine die. I now put that question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. House is adjourned.